Hey everybody, it is just 12 noon now. Let's give folks another couple of minutes to get on. Um, so a couple of housekeeping things. If everybody could mute yourself, that'd be great. Inevitably, every time I do one of these, somebody gets a phone call and one of their listings is going sideways, and we end up hearing the entire torrid story. Oh, hey, Alan.
Hey, Rich. Sorry.
No problem. You could probably teach this session.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn all your secrets so that you and I can converge. No, I so appreciate you hosting this. I think it's great information.
Yeah, I don't have very many secrets.
Me either. I'm an open book and a short read.
Cool. We've got 15 people on and 99 sign up, which means that 35 should join. So let's see how we do. Well, 12:02. So let me see if I can get this going. And I'm going to click my video off so I don't have to worry about staying on the screen. There we go. Share that. There's that. All right. Jeremy Pratt, can are
Yeah,
we
looks
are,
good.
are we long? Okay. All right. I get nervous. We did one of these a couple of months ago and it didn't work right. So, all right, folks, 12:03. So let's get going. First of all, thank you everybody for attending. Again, if you can please mute yourselves, that'd be great. Said earlier, every time we do one of these, somebody has a deal that goes sideways and they aren't muted and we hear the whole story. Um, which is kind of entertaining, but it's not why we're here for an hour. So if you don't mind, we would all appreciate it. So thank you very much. So guys, kind of jumping into it, we're going to talk about navigating real estate auctions for buyer agents and listing agents. We're going to go through terms, kind of some best practices, kind of what to look for if you're repping a buyer and what to look for if you are repping a seller. And then also how different auction companies, including ours, work with listing agents if you find yourself in a auction centric kind of a situation and what your options are there. So kind of a little bit about our background. Um, Griffin is Ohio based. We have an office in the Tampa area of Florida, um, affiliates through MarkNet Alliance all over the United States. So I've been doing this since 1997. So just a little bit. Um, do commercial and residential, have done brokerage as well as auction. and have been teaching courses, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 years. So hopefully you guys can get a lot out of this. Please feel free to put questions into the chat, and we're going to try to do all the Q&A at the very end. But I will go through each and every question that gets put into the chat, and I'll stay on the Zoom until we answer all of them. So feel free to put that in there so we don't lose it, and you don't need to remember it because I'll go through and scroll through and get all those questions answered at the end. So on here with us is myself and Jeremy Pratt. Jeremy is a broker in Florida and Ohio, and our director of operations. And so there's myself, my beautiful picture. I create the chaos, and Jeremy fixes all the problems that I generate. So it's pretty good. It's a pretty good team. There are a total of five of us. Like I said, we are doing stuff Ohio, Florida, and in various other states, based with our client base, kind of takes us all over. But those are us. Jeremy looks a little bit different. He's got longer hair now, and I have less. But other than that, that's us. So we're going to start with the different types of auctions. We're going to be talking mostly about traditional, as we do have folks from different states on this session, and foreclosure is different based upon the state that you're in. I mean, not significantly different, but different enough that we're not going to spend too much time on it. But so when you hear traditional, I'm meaning traditional auction, not necessarily traditional listing. So just understand that I say traditional, I'm thinking the auction side, not the brokerage side. So here's kind of our two real different styles. Traditional and foreclosure. Traditional, kind of the differences between traditional and foreclosure, interior access in a traditional auction sale. And traditional is going to mean um, a you can an identifiable seller, right? That could be a consumer seller. It could be a corporate seller. It could also be a bankruptcy trustee, um, or a contract that comes directly from a judge or a bank. Foreclosure is we really don't have a seller, we just have a court order, and we're taking part in the judicial sale, right? So in traditional, you do have interior access. Contrary to popular belief, financing is allowed in real estate auctions. Um, there are not financing contingencies in most contracts, but financing is allowed. We've got a bunch of them going on right now. The buyer is getting a mortgage to finance the property. We also go through significant marketing. So that's going to be professional photos, email blasts, MLS or LoopNet if it's commercial, web syndication, social media, depending on the project and the property. There might also be a PR push. We just had one in Florida that we were selling for a very well-known international charity called the International Justice Mission. Put out a press release on that and ended up with newspaper and and TV coverage. So the marketing in your auction sales is pretty significant, sometimes even more than in a general brokerage listing. In traditional auction, you'll also have information package. Information package is going to include, at a minimum, copy of the purchase and sale agreement, copy of the terms and conditions of sale, copy of the tax record for that property. It may very well also have a home inspection, a pre-listing home inspection. It may also have a a title search. And in the event that there is a homeowners association or condo board, we're going to be putting the HOA docs or the condo docs in that information package as well. The information package is developed as extensive as we possibly can ahead of time because the auction contract is non-contingent. So the due diligence that you would do in a general brokerage style listing after you go into contract, um, there is not that allowance in an auction contract. It is, non-contingent. So we're going to provide, and most auction companies are going to provide as much of that information that you would want to review in a due diligence period after contracting in a package for you to review up front. Okay. In most traditional auctions, we're also going to be passing free and clear title. 99% of the time. There's always that little 1% where there's something that's being taken subject to, but for the most part, it is free and clear title, which is another reason that we're getting the title search done ahead of time is to make sure that there aren't any glitches, there isn't a title problem, so we can move to closing right away. We did just have one where again it was a condo, and it we were selling it, are going to be selling it for the heirs, and found out that there was a title problem and the property now needs to go through probate. So we identified that up front ahead of time. So we didn't go through the effort, find a buyer, get somebody excited, only to find out that we couldn't pass title for a matter of months, right? So we are going to do that title search up front and be warranting free and clear title. There's also a traditional closing in this type of an auction scenario. So there is I almost said there, a HUD 1. So there's a settlement statement. So now you know how I'm getting a little old. There's going to be a settlement statement that is going to identify, what we're, who's paying what, et cetera. Title insurance, if there is, all of it's going to be on paper. Now, the foreclosure scenario is completely different. There is no seller. There are no disclosures, right? Because there's nobody to sign a disclosure form, right? Especially a condition report, right? Because we're getting a court order from a judge. Judge has never seen it. Honestly, I probably am not going to ever see it either. Um, we've done guessing going on 3,000, probably more. Of those 3,000 or so foreclosure properties, I think I might have seen three or four of them. It just isn't something that occurs. So there's no interior access. Because there's no interior access, it's usually a cash only deal. Now, if you can find some lender to loan the money to make the purchase, of course, you can do that. But we do say cash only in the foreclosure scenario because there is no interior access. And because of no interior access, um, you can't get an appraisal done and you can't get an inspection done. So the financing becomes more and more difficult. So we do tell people cash only. There's limited marketing, primarily because we don't have a lot of information. What we get is what we can pull off of um, public sources, right? So we're not doing pro photos, right? Can't get inside. We're not even allowed as the foreclosure auction company, we're not even allowed to step foot on the property. So not even stand in the front yard and take a picture. That is considered trespassing, right? So very limited marketing, limited information available, no disclosures. Like I said, we're not talking with a seller. We don't know what's going on inside. So you as the buyer are going to be, making guesses. Now, I can tell you after buying a few hundred of them at foreclosure sale like this, which is kind of how I got into this business of doing the foreclosure auctions. Um, you get to be fairly good at making assumptions as to what's wrong with a property by looking at it from the outside. You're not always right, but a lot of times you are. Again, very limited information, no title guarantee. You are going to have a preliminary title search is going to be done by the foreclosing lender, and that's going to be in the foreclosure file. But there is no free and clear title guarantee. It is on the purchaser to do their own research and determine by themselves if they think that they are going to be getting free and clear title to the property. Okay. Um, 99% of the time, there's not a problem, but there is no guarantee. And in one of these, there is no seller offered title insurance. So if you want to buy title insurance for yourself, more than welcome to do so. but it's not something that's offered in your foreclosure sale. There's also not a traditional closing. Most of the time, what you're doing is you're doing a wire transfer or a certified check. You're taking that to the sheriff's department. You're taking it to the auctioneer who is completing the transaction on behalf of the court. Um, you're wiring money or trading a certified check, and you're getting a deed, and that's it. In some cases, in Ohio, for private selling officer transactions, you'll wire it to a title company. Title company will record the deed for you if you want them to, or they'll send it to you or hand it to you. But it's really trade money for a deed. There's not a traditional closing. There's not a settlement statement. There's a just a summary of distribution. Um, that some of the title companies will give you, and the distribution requirements are set forward in a confirmation entry that dictates who gets title to the property and where the funds go. But it's really trading money for deed, so a lot different. It's kind of our basic auction lingo. Buyer's premium. We have a whole slide on it, but basically, a buyer's premium is an amount paid by a purchaser over and above the high bid price. In some scenarios, that's 5%. Sometimes it's 10. I've seen auctioneers in real estate transactions with a 15% buyer's premium. If you get into artwork or anything like that, you could have upwards of a 20 or a 22% buyer's premium. Um, Now, understand that the buyer's premium is not necessarily the auctioneer's commission. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Okay. But don't consider it what the auctioneer is getting paid. Don't consider it a commission amount, but it is an amount over and above. And that gets added onto the high bid price. And the buyer's premium plus the high bid price includes the total contract price. So the TCP, and that is financeable. And the reason the buyer's premium is rolled into the total contract price is so it can be financed by the purchaser. If it was not and was paid outside, it would need to be done in cash. Okay. So for that reason, BP is included in the contract price. You're also going to hear the word terms of sale. Those are the terms that the bidder is going to agree to ahead of time in order to register for the auction. In an online auction, especially ours, it's a click. Back in the day when we were doing stuff live, we would hand the prospective bidders the terms of sale on paper, and they would read through them and sign them. So it's what they're going to agree to ahead of time in order to participate. Now, those terms of sale are the basis for the purchase and sale agreement. Kind of put it into perspective. Terms of sale, maybe that's a couple of pages, a page, page and a half, 2 pages, and then you're going to take it and you're going to convert that on the back end. Terms of sale becomes the purchase and sale agreement. All the legalese goes into it, ends up being like 5 or 6 pages. But all of the terms up front and the contract on the back end are the same exact terms. We just try to make it simple on you on the front end. There's a broker registration, and this is important for folks who are buyer agents. Okay. Broker registration for most auction companies is where the broker identifies the bidder and points that out. And folks, I can hear a couple of people with some noise in the background. If you could please take a look and mute yourselves, please. Appreciate it. Thank you. So the broker registration is you as the agent or the broker are identifying the prospective purchaser or your client to the auction company up front in order to secure your potential commission on the back end. Okay? And the reasoning for this is so we as the auction company know that that person is represented, right? Most auction companies, if you there is not a broker registration ahead of time, and you show up on the back end and say, "Hey, yeah, Bob was the high bidder and I'm his agent," there is a risk that you will not get paid by that auction company because you did not identify that prospective purchaser up front. And this kind of goes back to the old days when there were ballroom auctions and you had 600, 700, 1,000 people in a room and you're selling 150 properties at a time. And believe it or not, I know that this is going to come as a shock, but real estate agents would stand out in front of that ballroom And when people walked out, they would say, "Hey, did you buy a property? Did you buy a property? Did you buy a property?" And when somebody said yes, it'd say, "Okay, great, I'm going to be your agent." And they'd go and they'd fill out the paperwork and they'd get paid. And the auctioneers basically said, "Yeah, we're not going for that." So broker registration um, was the solution, and it is still in practice today. So if you're representing a buyer, make sure that you're going to register that buyer ahead of time. There's more on this. We'll get deeper into it. There's also a max bid feature that's utilized in online auctions. It's basically where the computer system bids for you up to a set amount, right? So you'll go in an online auction situation, you might go in and the bidding is at 100,000 and you can enter in the next bid increment. Maybe it's 101,000 or $100,100, right? And you can enter it in and do it bid by bid by bid by bid manually. Not a problem. There's also the max bid. With that, you go in and say, "Hey, the property's at $100,000 right now. I don't want to bid on this thing 100 bucks at a time for the next 30 minutes or whatever." Maybe you're saying, "Hey, I can't participate in the auction when it ends on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. I've got to work," right? So you can go in and you can put in the highest bid that you're willing to pay, and the computer system will bid for you against other bidders up to that amount. So it's called the max bid feature. There are also three um, primary financial types when we talk about reserve or no reserve, and those are absolute, minimum bidder reserve, or subject to confirmation. So these are all three things that you want to know about, and you want to be asking the auction company. Say, "Hey, is there a reserve? Is this absolute, or is it subject to confirmation?" And here's the difference: absolute is property selling regardless of price. The high bidder on auction day 100% absolutely will be the buyer of that property. There is no tomorrow. It is going to sell to the highest bidder. It's called an absolute auction. Minimum bidder reserve, seller has the right to accept, reject, or counter if there is not a bid to a particular level. Now, even if there is a minimum bid or a reserve, that doesn't mean that the property absolutely will not sell if it doesn't meet that price. It just means that the seller has the right to reject if it doesn't get to a certain price. A lot of situations, especially with financial institutions, in non-foreclosure settings, um, they're putting a minimum bid on to protect themselves, but they have every intention of selling. And most times, probably, I don't know if I've ever sold an REO property for a lender um, where they didn't remove the reserve and sell at the high bid. Um, but they have the right to accept, reject, or counter if it doesn't meet, say, $100,000 limit. And that's going to be contracted with the auctioneer. More times than not, it is an undisclosed reserve. So it's the secret reserve, if you will. Auctioneer knows what that number is, seller knows what that number is, but it's not disclosed to the general public. Okay. There are situations where there is what's called a disclosed reserve. Still see that sometimes, but not very often. The third one, and it's the one that we tend to use a lot because we do a lot of court-ordered sales, is subject to confirmation. And what that means is the seller can accept, reject, or counter at any price, right? With a court confirmation sale, even if we know that the court doesn't care what the price is, and we know that the judge is going to accept the highest bid price, even if it's a dollar, in order to move to closing, we have to get a confirmation entry and we have to get a court order that basically directs the property to be sold. So there is no way to do an absolute sale in a court case, at least most of the time, unless there's a court order directing it to be absolute upfront, which almost never happens. So subject to confirmation. So your buyer items, inspections and disclosures. So this is a lot for your buyer agents. So we talked about you can inspect and preview before the auction, usually. Okay. People say, "Can we have an inspector come?" Absolutely, you can have an inspector come. Go through the property, not a problem, but it must be done before the auction. There's not an inspection contingency. So On auction day, if you're the high bidder and the buyer and the seller accepts, it is a non-contingent contract. Are there going to be open houses? Usually, for a traditional sale, there will be open houses. Sometimes there are private showings. It just depends. If the property is occupied by a consumer, it's usually open house. If it's vacant, there's open house, and sometimes there are private showings where you can just schedule it and go. If there are copies of leases available, if they exist, you might see that in a property information package if it's a rented property. Again, financing is okay. All disclosures are required because we are selling for a consumer. If we're selling for a trustee, for example, depending on your state, there's going to be, a one pager that basically says, unknown, but you have to, depending on your state, you may have to get that filled out as a listing agent. So if we do in a particular state have to have that kind of waiver document, it'll be included. And just we said up top, you can inspect, but there are no post bidding inspections that all has to be done up front. Foreclosure is a little bit different. You cannot inspect. And the reason is, hey, we're taking somebody's property away from them. There is a title holder, and that title holder retains the right to quiet and peaceful possession of that property until such time as the title transfers. So no interior inspections. No open houses, no private showings. Again, can't get in. No traditional financing, can't get in, can't get an inspection, can't get a general or traditional mortgage. No copies of leases. We don't even have keys, right? Even if there's a vacant property with a lockbox on it, we don't have that key. We don't have that code, right? The loan servicer and the foreclosure auction company, we don't interact. We don't even know how to get in touch with them. And even if we did, they wouldn't give us the lockbox code for insurance reasons. So even if you see a lockbox on the property, there's still no interior access 99.9% of the time. Like I said earlier, we've done 3,000 plus of these. I know that there has only been one foreclosure auction, one time, probably 6 or 7 years ago, where we actually had interior access. So one out of 3,000. So essentially, there's no interior access. Okay. No disclosures are required because there's nobody to sign them. And again, beating on this one, no interior access until closing. Basic contract, buy side purchase agreement. First, you want to make sure what is your sale type, absolute minimum bid, reserve, subject to confirmation. You're going to make sure that you need to know if there's broker participation or not. Some auction companies offer broker participation, co-op, referral fee, whatever the auction company calls it. Sometimes there is, sometimes there's not. It just depends. So you have to understand the terms. If there is broker participation, there's probably pre-registration, okay, where you identify the prospective purchaser to the auction company. You have to understand most auction companies, they're not paying you to represent the purchaser. They're paying you to introduce the purchaser to the opportunity. Okay. The introduction of the opportunity. You bring a buyer. So what that means, and we're going to kind of get into it a little bit more, what that means is buyer shows up at an open house, signs in, sits there, has conversation with the auction company, gets a copy of the information package, doesn't say anything about an agent. You're not there. That auctioneer is going to say, hey, unrepresented purchaser. And if you call up a week later, after your guy's already registered to bid, the whole thing, understand you may be risking your compensation. Okay. I also understand that the purchase and sale agreement is a custom form. It's not a board form. You can get a copy of that. Most auction companies will give you a copy of that ahead of time. If they're not willing to, it's kind of a red flag. Now, understand, caveat, that the auction agreement, the purchase agreement may not be available right away. Okay. A lot of times we're doing open houses, we're advertising the property, and we're waiting on the seller's attorney to get back with us and okay the contract. Okay, the terms aren't going to change, but you know how lawyers are, right? They can't look at a document and not have a red line, even if it's just a comma. So just understand that while the custom agreement is going to be available before the auction ends, it may not be available at the very, very beginning. Okay. Purchase agreement is going to be as is. Okay. I have never seen an auction purchase agreement that was not. It is going to have a defined closing date. That might be 30 days. It might be 40, 45, 60, depending on the property, and depending on the seller's situation, right? Some auction purchase agreements say that the property is going to close not earlier than X and not later than Y, right? A lot of times when you see that those dates like that in the purchase and sale agreement, it is because the seller hasn't moved out yet. Some buyers want to go close 3, 4, 5 days after the auction. Um, if we don't have that defined in the purchase and sale agreement, now we have a seller that needs 21 days to move and a buyer that wants to close in 5 days, right? So there's going to be a defined closing date in the purchase and sale agreement. Now, on defined closing date, also understand that if the property says that it's going to close in 30 days and it does not, some sellers are not going to do an extension. They're just going to keep your deposit and go talk to the backup bidder. It is also possible, and I know it's in all of our contracts, that if the closing does not occur within that window for any reason, one of the remedies that the seller has is to continue with the transaction, but the buyer is going to pay a penalty, a per day penalty for every day that they do not close. In our standard contract, that's $300 a day. So, and that's not holidays and weekends excluded. That is days. So if it's supposed to close on the 24th of December and it doesn't, and everybody goes on vacation and the buyer now comes back on the 3rd and wants to close, those holidays count, $300 a day. So just understand that the defined closing date is hard and fast, and there are penalties for not complying with that. It's also going to identify what the buyer costs are. Buyer costs, one of them, which is not typical to a traditional general brokerage sale, is most auction companies and auctioneers, auction sellers have the purchaser pay for the title insurance premium if they want one. Say, okay, you want a new title search and you want a title policy? Great, not a problem. You can have one, but you're going to pay the cost of it, Mr. Buyer. So just read the contract, understand what the buyer costs are. Another buyer cost is going to be the buyer's premium. Buyer's premium, at least in all of our sales and all the auctioneers that I know that I've worked with over the years, the buyer's premium is one of those things that is identified in the advertising, it's in the terms, it's on the website. So it's not something that's hidden, but you do want to ask if you are looking through and you don't see anything about a buyer's premium, make sure to ask the auction company, is there a buyer's premium or not? Okay. And then, title requirements. Again, title insurance cost is very often borne by the purchaser. So just understand what the title issue is. Is it being transferred free and clear? Because foreclosures, there's no guarantee. And is the seller paying title insurance or are they not? So just questions for you to know to ask. Buyer's premium, pretty simple, right? $100,000 high bid. Buyer's premium is 10% in this situation. Total contract price, 110, right? Buyer's premiums, again, I've seen them range from 5% to 15. Ours range from 5 to 10. We haven't gone to 15, but I have seen some auction companies started going that way. So responsibilities representing a buyer. I started doing this session before buyer broker agreements were a requirement, but it's always something that I've recommended. But yep, got to have an agreement with your client. Register your buyer with the auction company. Okay, I'm going to hit on this one hard again. Register your client with the auction company. If you do not, you may not get paid. Okay. Tell your client not to reach out to the auction company directly, because if they do, you might not get paid. Go to the showings and the open houses with the client. If you don't, you might not get paid. Okay. All of these things vary based upon the different auction company. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. With us, if you are representing a bidder, they show up to the open house by themselves. They sit there, have conversations with the auction representative. They go and they register and they start bidding. And then all of a sudden, I get a phone call and say, "Hey, I'm Bob. I'm representing John and Mary." I'm saying, "Well, John and Mary were at the open house at this date and time because I got them signed in. They registered to bid, and that's time stamped because it's in my system. And all of that happened over the last 10 days. I've done follow-up calls with them. I've talked to them twice. We've had emails going back and forth. Nobody said anything about an agent. If those things all occur, our company would not be paying you a commission. Okay. So just understand that that is a standard in the industry. If the agent shows up down the road, as opposed to at the very beginning, there's a risk you might not get paid. So just know going in, it is your responsibility to introduce the buyer to the auction company and to the situation. And there are documents that go along with that. If you fill them out and you follow the rules, it's very easy to earn a commission as a buyer agent. If you don't, you risk not getting paid. Okay. If you get past that, very few responsibilities. Make sure the client's registered to bid, whether that's at the live auction or on the auctioneer's website. Make sure the client is financially qualified, right? Because there are no financing contingencies. And the auction company is going to probably ask for proof of funds. Okay, they might not ask for proof of funds at registration, but they're going to be continuing to ask for proof of funds during the auction process. And for a lot of auction companies, if you cannot provide proof of funds before the end of bidding, the auction company may very well shut your bidding privileges off. Okay. Another thing about financially qualified, if you think you want to pay $200,000 for a property and go get a lender letter that says $200,000 and the bidding goes to $201,000 and your letter says 200, the auction company may suspend the bidding privileges at 200. So get the lender letter or show proof of funds if it's cash or stocks or other investments. Show what you can actually qualify for, not just what you think you want to pay. Okay, because there are auction companies that will cut off the bidding at that level. We had one, and it was actually a requirement within our court case. And the judge told us under no circumstances are you to accept a bid from anybody who A, didn't provide proof of funds, and B, wanted to bid above the level that identified in their proof of funds. So, just make sure that they're financially qualified and that you're giving the auction company their maximum qualification, not just some arbitrary number. Okay. Do not bid for the client. This is a big one. Agents would say, "Oh, I'm going to bid for the client. They're off doing something else. This is part of my service that I'm providing to make it easy on them." Yes, but unless you have a power of attorney, you don't have the authority to sign the terms and conditions on behalf of the client. You don't have the authority to make financial obligations, which is what a bid is, on behalf of the client, and you don't have the authority to bind that client to the high bid. Okay, you can't sign the contract. Right? And what happens, and again, if this is a court situation, it becomes really messy because we're telling the agents, hey, don't bid for the client unless you have a power of attorney. They bid anyway. Then the client decides they're not signing the contract. And I've got a judge looking at me going, what's going on here? Why is this a mess? And buddy, I'm not hanging you out to dry. I am going to tell the judge, hey, I told him not to bid. It was in the terms, it was in writing. I told him 16 times. They bid for the client anyway. And Joey at XYZ Brokerage messed this whole thing up, Your Honor. And you want to talk to him? Here's his phone number. Okay. So please do not bid for the client. It is a mess. Right? Can you get through all that? All you have to do then, just collect your fee at closing. Right?
Ay, la alguien está para allá.
Hey
Ah,
guys, can we make sure to
thank
mute? Jeremy, how do I mute everybody here?
you, thank you, thank you. I want to keep on my.
Click on the
Audio.
participants at the bottom. There should be a mute all feature.
Well, there should being the key word in this sentence, right?
Yes.
All right, well, hold on. I'm clicking on stuff trying to mute people and I'm now moving through.
Oh.
Is it there? Audio settings?
No, if you click on, there's on the bottom, there
Oh,
should
the
be
dots.
Oh, no, I don't need to.
Click on participants.
click on it. And then it,
Participants.
yes, and then at the bottom of that box,
Ah, there we go.
Thank you,
There you
thank
go.
you. Thank you.
There we go. All right. Let me see if I can back this up. I think I'm only ahead one slide. Not so much. Okay. So guys, we're going to walk through registration process, broker sign up. And again, I'm showing you our screen, but it is similar for most auction companies. All right. So there's broker sign up. You're going to go ahead, click on that. And something like this is going to come up, right? Broker acknowledgement form. It's going to be the terms under which buyer agent's going to get paid. You're going to fill in auction date, property address, etc., your name, buyer's name, contact information for everybody, etc. Pretty simple. Um, some auctioneers still do it on paper. They'll email it to you, you fill it out, send it back in. Ours is electronic. It's on our website. It syncs with a CRM, so it's time stamped and everything's there. Pretty simple, but auctioneers' processes are different. Again, sometimes paper, sometimes electronic. Foreclosure auctions. We're going to run through kind of the setup. This was a screen from a foreclosure auction presentation. From here through just online bidding, whether it's foreclosure auction or not, it's the same. So, and again, most auction companies are going to use the same type of a format. So what we're showing you is going to be, widely used, very similar across the country. So you click on the auctions, whether it's auctions or foreclosure auctions, something like this is going to show up, right? Then you say, hey, I'm interested in Salisbury Road. You're going to go click on Salisbury Road. Something like this is going to come up, right? From here, this is now the bid platform. The earlier slide was called the auction calendar. This is now the bidding platform, right? So this is where the buyer takes over, the prospective buyer, your client takes over, right? Click on register to bid. Another screen is going to come up. That's going to say, hey, name, address, your particulars, pick a login, pick a password, etc. Some auction companies are going to do a second step verification of you, right? They're going to and we don't do it. We've got another process, but some auction companies will have the prospective purchaser put in a credit card number. Okay. And that is not so they can necessarily take a deposit, although some do. But the real reason is it's an ID check, right? So what the auctioneer is doing is they're saying, okay, well, you're going to put in a credit card number and we're going to charge you $1 to see if it goes through. Right. And what they're doing is their computer system is double checking to make sure that the name in the registration matches the name on the credit card that's being put in, that the address in the registration matches the address where the billing goes to. If it doesn't, the fact that the person that's putting it in knows the billing address for the credit card, it's an ID check. Okay. It's not necessarily there to get money. It's a second form of ID. A lot of other auction companies will use forewarn, right? You're putting in a phone number. Um, they may very well be running that particular person through forewarn to see if the name matches the phone number, especially if we're talking about a chattel auction where we're selling, lighters or toys or something like that. A lot of auction companies will use forewarn to see if the person registering has a history of fraud or not. Okay, so there are double checks in the system, but that's what happens when you register to bid. Okay, finding your auctions. So of course, Griffin USA, we'd love to have you guys there. Auction Zip is kind of an MLS for auctions. It's not just real estate. Realtor.com, Zillow, Proxybid, Zoom, Auction.com. Auction.com is the 800-pound gorilla. They do a ton of real estate all over the country. High Bid and Go to Auction are other kind of auction MLSs, if you will. And then these are my Ohio guys. Ohio Real Estate Auction and Auction Ohio also do an enormous amount of real estate auctions. Um, Auction Ohio is actually in Florida too. I don't know if they're called Auction Florida or not, but another company similar to ours that goes between states. So working with an auctioneer, a couple things on this. Auction companies work two ways. They will do a referral with you, or some of them will partner with you for a commission split. Okay. Just depends on what that auction company's process is and if you want to stay involved. We do both. We refer and we partner. The terms are a little bit different. Referral is, hey, you know, you're not going to be involved at all. You're giving me a name. It's going to be, a percentage of the listing side commission. Partner is, something that's a little bit different, and it's going to kind of depend on what you as the um, co-listing agent would need to be doing operationally. And there are a couple slides in here that'll show you what those responsibilities are. But one of the things is, hey, why would I, as a seller or as a listing agent, think that auction's a good idea, right? A lot of our auction clients are driven by a time frame. Okay, there's an established time frame in an auction. In a traditional listing, not so much. We're going to put it on the market. Hey, when the buyer shows up that gives us an offer we like, we'll take it off the market and close. In an auction, hey, we're having an auction. We're getting a high bid in 30 days. So you have an established time frame. We say more price control in traditional, less price control in auction. It's kind of a misnomer. The reality is that there's no price control on either side, right? The market determines the price. You can put a list price on it, you can have an asking price on it, but that's not really controlling the price. The price is controlled by the buying public, right? So is there less? Is there more? I don't know. It's in there. We can debate it if you want, but the reality is the market makes the moves, right? In an auction or an accelerated sale, we do have more competition, right? We've got in most of our transactions, we have multiple people bidding on the property. In traditional, you may have one person makes one offer and that's it. Auction, you have multiple registrations, multiple bids. Traditional, you're closing on the first acceptable offer. In the auction, hey, we may have dozens, we may have 50, we may have 100 acceptable offers, but we're going to take the highest acceptable offer, right? So highest bid versus the first guy to show up and give us something that's close, right? Costs are shared in traditional. In an accelerated sale or an auction, there is more buyer expense. One of the things we touched on is the buyer's premium. Second thing we touched on is the title insurance premium. Okay, so there is more driven to the buyer, right? The seller's expense is pretty much title search, tax prorations, and mortgage payoff, depending on the auction company and how it works. But that's pretty much it. Buyer pays everything else. Auction for sellers, it's non-contingent, right? Not only does the seller know, hey, we're going to have bids in 30 days, right? It's going to be non-contingent, and we're not going to have to worry about inspections. We're not going to have to worry about the financing. We're not going to have to worry about this. We're not going to have to worry about that. So what we're talking with our clients about right now is, hey, the ones that we're booking for today are going to close right after Thanksgiving. The auction is going to close right after Thanksgiving, and the seller is going to be closed and sold and money in their pocket before the end of the year. Right? That's a huge driver for people, especially if you're in a state where timelines are dragging out. And we're in, we've got an office in Florida. Our Florida sellers are going nuts. They've been on the market for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, and now it's coming to the holidays, it's coming to the end of the year. They still don't have a buyer. And we're talking to a lot of sellers right now. Now, not all of them will turn into clients of ours, but the fun clients want an established time frame, and they want non-contingent. So if you have a seller that just, hey, I want to be closed by the end of the year, maybe thinking about an auction scenario is a good idea. We also are cramming all the marketing together. Hey, if you've got a budget for a listing and you think that it might take 6 months to get it sold, you're going to spread that spend out, right? We may have the same exact budget for marketing that property, but our marketing period is 21 days. So all of that extensive marketing gets kind of crammed into that short period. This is another different why for sellers. So your auctions are kind of solving problems. One of the biggest problem is, what should it sell for? Right? Another one we're doing right now, had a conversation with the seller the other day. I'm sorry, the potential co-listing agent. I said, all right, what does this thing comp at? She says, I have no idea. I said, what do you mean you don't? I said, you run a CMA? She said, yeah, I did. But the comparable properties range from 180,000 to $600,000 just because we're in an area that doesn't have sales. And in a year, within 3 mile radius, there are very few sales of this square footage with this property type, with this many bedrooms. So, okay, I don't know that area. I'm going to have to trust in you. But yeah, so pricing is a problem. So if pricing is a problem, auction solves that problem. We don't have to come up with a list price. The market is going to tell us what it's worth, right? Another one, hot or unique. Unique in that, hey, we can't really comp it, or hot in, yeah, we could comp it, but boy, this thing could get 20 offers. Well, if it could get 20 offers, auction is the best way to sell it. You're going to set the rules, non-contingent contract, and what are people going to pay for it? And here's kind of a picture of on the right-hand side. Um, this one sort of checked a bunch of boxes. So we'll talk about that property here in a minute. But high DOM and our Florida listings, we're seeing high DOM, seeing people on the market for 6, 7, 8 months, not selling. Great property, it's just not selling, right? Condos, crazy. Condos aren't selling in Florida, right? High condo dues, high insurance. I looked at one the other day. I thought about buying it for my daughter. The seller, the purchase price on that was $89,000. The condo association dues for that unit, which is I think is like a 600 square foot unit, were 750 some dollars a month, right? $90,000 property, condo dues $750. The math just isn't mathing down here for condos. So again, it's creating high DOM. Another one, financial distress, right? Pre-foreclosure, bankruptcy, okay, death or divorce. Um, Big driver for listings too, but auctions as well. Vacant for a long time, in need of repair, or the seller just wants quick cash. We see a lot of investors that they just want quick cash, especially if they're turning and flipping properties. They're like, hey, look, get me out in 30 days. I get my cash and I can put it back in something else. So it's a vehicle for investor sellers to get out quick to free up cash so they can go make more investments, make more money. Okay, so all of these different things. Kind of this Jacksboro, Tennessee in this slide. This checked a bunch of different boxes on the list to the left, right? It was vacant. There was a court case, so there's financial distress. It was tied to a lawsuit. The judge told the disputing parties that they absolutely needed to sell it. It was hard to comp, and a lot of people wanted it. Right? If we would have listed it, we looked at the comps and kind of figured, yeah, this should probably list for about $2 million. Ultimately, the judge said, nope, get it sold. We're not listing it. We're not putting it on the market for 6 months. Okay. We're also going into um, vacation time, right? This seller or this couple that owned it that was disputing, they used it as a vacation property for themselves, but they also used it as an Airbnb rental, right? So there were rentals that were coming up. There were rentals on the books. So it just needed to happen in a particular time frame. So we ended up with the two disputing parties as bidders, and I think we had 12 or 14 other bidders. Ultimately, the buyer who bought it lived in Chicago, wasn't in Tennessee. His best friend owns the house on the right in the picture. So we sold it to that guy's best buddy. So they now have two vacation houses next to each other. And the two disputing parties were bidding against each other. The other parties were bidding. This guy wanted to live next to and have a vacation place next to his best friend and ended up paying $750,000 more than we thought we would get if we listed it. So, and bunch of different things on this checklist that all wrapped up into this one property. So again, problems to sold, right? And a lot of agents are looking at this and going, all right, sounds good, but I really don't deal in properties that I would ever take to auction. And not a problem. Um, but what if you started looking at it saying, if I could take three, four, five, six a year that I normally wouldn't deal with and just float them to an auction company that I have a referral relationship with and make commissions just on referral fees on stuff that I don't want to touch. Because maybe it's something you just don't want to deal with. Maybe you deal with luxury and you've got you see something that's falling down, or somebody calls you and says, hey, my mom's house is hadn't been lived in for 5 years, it's fallen down, got to get rid of it. And you say, I'm sorry, I just don't deal in that kind of property. But hey, Bob at Auction America might be able to help you, and you can do a referral and earn commissions, right? Tennessee sale, we had the agent stay involved. Here's the math. That's what the agent would have made if they would have just listed it. The agent actually made that bottom number. They stayed in the deal and worked the operations. It wasn't just a referral. So sellers, why are they considering this? No seller commission, no mispricing. They don't have upfront costs most of the time. Okay. Most of the time, some auction companies will charge a marketing fee. Okay. Some do, some don't. Sellers are selling as is with no repairs. Okay. Some of the auction companies are going to manage and fund the marketing. Okay. They might charge the seller on the back end. There might be a split between the co-listing agent and the auction company, and it's going to be taken out of proceeds. But most of the auction companies are going to manage all of the marketing themselves, and they're going to fund it. Okay. Sometimes that gets paid back, sometimes it doesn't. You have to talk to the auction company. No inspections and renegotiations. The deposit is non-refundable, right? If the buyer doesn't close for any reason whatsoever, seller keeps the deposit. And a quicker closing. Most of the auction closings tend to be, the contracts usually say 30 days or less. Most auction buyers, because they come in, they're pre-qualified or they have cash and they're ready to go, we're getting the properties closed faster than the 30 days in the contract, which means two things. One, the seller gets their money back faster, and the auctioneer and real estate broker partner get their dollars faster too. So your co-listing benefits, okay, depending on the auction company. Okay, first might be a new income stream for you if you've never done this before. It's possible that there are no out-of-pocket costs for you, at least up front, right? If the auction company is going to upfront fund all the marketing, or if the seller is, right? Auction company is going to help you close the seller. You don't have to know anything about real estate auctions. You just need to know to, you know, call the auctioneer, bring them into the conversation. Most of the auction companies will handle the discussion with the seller with you on the phone and close that listing contract with that prospective auction seller. You're working with a system, right? We know such and such gets completed on day one, such and such gets completed on day two, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Working through, with us, it's roughly a 21-day period. Again, the auctioneer is managing the marketing, quick closing. Um, at least with us, we're managing the post-contract efforts. So there's not a transaction coordinator for the listing agent that they're paying, right? So I know a lot of listing agents, they don't have a full-time transaction coordinator. They have one that they share with other people or they pay per listing. So that's something that the listing agent isn't paying for anymore. We're handling it. Most auction companies are handling it. Um, Again, it's really easy because it's a non-contingent contract, right? And then a lot of auction companies will give the co-listing agent the buyer leads without a referral fee. So something to ask the co-listing agent or the auctioneer if you are potentially looking at doing a co-listing. Um, Agent responsibilities, again, all auctioneers are different. Identify the seller, draft the asset description and put it in MLS if the auction company is not in the MLS in that particular area. Again, by putting it in the MLS, it's going to sync through your syndication portals. Okay. Another thing for the co-listing agent, if they're putting it in the MLS, it's going to show up on your performance in MLS. So if you're looking at getting to certain levels or a certain amount of closings, this is something that would would be, hey, another sale in your MLS calculations. Responsibility for marketing, not necessarily a lot. You can email your sphere of influence, do marketing if you want to. You don't have to. The auction company is going to handle most of it most of the time. If you are going to do your own marketing or want to, just coordinate with the auction company. Make sure that you're doing that you're on message, that both you and the auction company have the same messaging. Your responsibility as the co-listing agent be conduct private showings as necessary and manage the open houses as necessary. Okay. Respond to property level inquiries. Hey, if you get a question and it's, for example, there's a question about the local schools. Okay. Well, my offices are in Tampa, Florida, and in Columbus, Ohio. Right? I don't know anything about the school system in Toledo. So that would be, hey, you're a local agent in Toledo, Ohio. Can you answer this question about the Toledo school system or the elementary school that's a block away from the house, right? I'm going to answer questions like, what does paragraph 4 of the purchase and sale agreement mean? Right? So there is a little bit of responsibility for inquiries, not a lot. Most of the inquiries you're just going to forward to the auction company, they're going to handle it. Bidder follow-up, auction company is going to handle most of this. You may be asked to do a little bit of it, especially if you've developed rapport with a particular buyer. On auction day, manage the seller. Depending on the geographic area and the licensing, you may be asked to follow up with the high bidder presenting the contracts. Now, here's an example, right? Some states, you do not need a real estate license to undertake a real estate auction, but you do have to be partnered with a real estate agent in order to do that in that particular state. Okay. And by virtue of not having a real estate license, you cannot, as the auction company, the auctioneer, cannot present a purchase and sale agreement to a purchaser to sign. The agent has to do it. Now, the reality is, auction company is probably going to put that contract together, send it to you. You're going to send it to the buyer. Buyer's going to send it back. You're going to email it back to the auction company. It's pretty simple, but it is a responsibility. Right. And same thing, depending on the state, you may need to follow up with the high bidder to receive the contract back. That's pretty much it. At that point, you're just waiting to receive your payment and find more transactions. Okay, dollars. And then now this is This is just us, so I can't talk about every auction company. Co-listing agent, 30% of the commission. This is what we pay the co-listing agent. Okay. No more out-of-pocket costs for you. And with us, we have less operational responsibilities for that agent that was in the earlier slide. If you're doing a referral, it's essentially, hey, a 1%, which would be sort of like 30% of a traditional listing fee, listing side referral. If you guys are interested in like deeper dive, we can get into that with you. We just have to let's schedule a one-on-one call. So again, don't want to spend too much time on this, but if we're doing it with a co-listing agent, you have four responsibilities. Complete a CMA and introduce the seller, put it in the MLS if we're not in that MLS, conduct the open houses, and pass every single buyer and agent contact lead over to us. We'll deal with it. If we need to research what the situation is with the Toledo school block down the road, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. Okay. Some auction companies will do it that way, some won't. We have full responsibilities when we have a co-listing agent. Again, if anybody's interested in that, we can have a private conversation. So finding auctions, if you are a buyer agent or a listing agent, hey, look at your own portfolio listings. Is there something there that the sellers get antsy? They're like, hey, I want to be done in a month. I need to be out. Look at your own portfolio. Investors, divorce, pre-foreclosure. And this is going to work for auction. It's also going to work for traditional, right? Pre-foreclosure. Those people, they may need to sell the house. They may not be able to work this deal out. In bankruptcy, they may need to sell the house. Probate, heirs might not want the house. Law firms and attorneys, great leads for listings and for auctions, non-emotional. And they have deal flow. Get yourself in with one law firm, and I guarantee you, you're going to have multiple transactions from that law firm. Just the way it is. Do one and do it very, very well, and they will come back to you. Attorneys are loyal, and there's zero emotion. It's not their money. Financial managers, a little bit the same. They're a little bit more difficult than the attorneys, but also good leads. Expireds. I know some agents work expireds for traditional listings. Also, if you're going and talking to a seller that's expired, hey, what is the seller going to say to you, right? One of the questions they may very well ask, probably will ask, is what makes you different than any of the other agents that are calling me? Say, well, Mr. Seller, we provide a bunch of different solutions to you, not just put a sign in front and put it in the MLS and do some social media. We can do this in 21 days less with our auction partner. More than likely, nobody else is telling that expired seller, hey, have you thought about auction? 90% of them don't want, they're not going to want to do it. 10% of them will, but probably 99% of them aren't being offered that, and it sets you out from the rest of the competition. So just think about putting this tool in your toolbox. And again, local banks and credit unions, not your loan servicers. Loan servicers are an entire other presentation. Listing agreement contract. We're trying to do this in 90 minutes. We got 22 left, and we still have to do Q&A, so I'm going to run through this pretty quick. Exclusive right to sell, just like the purchase agreement, it's custom form. Commissions, sometimes it's buyer's premium only, sometimes there's a seller's commission. Agency at an auction, we're representing the seller only. There's no dual agency or split agency. We're focusing on the seller's obligations only. We're going to talk about there's a post-auction listing period. In our listing contract, it's only 7 days. If we can't get it sold at the auction or within 7 days, we're not going to want to work on that anymore. Some auction companies want to keep it for 30, 60, 90 days. So it just depends on what the auction company is. There's going to be a protection period, at least in our contract and in most auction companies' contracts. Even if in ours it says 7 days, there's going to be a protection period in there. It might be 30 or 60 days. And it's anybody that we introduce the property to and can document, right? It's not like, hey, anybody can come in and I've got carte blanche for the next 60 days. But if Steve Smith came to the open house and Steve Smith registered to bid and Steve Smith didn't buy the property during the auction period or during the 7-day listing period, but is sitting around waiting, thinking, oh, I'll wait until the auction company's not involved in this anymore and I'll go direct to the seller and buy it then. Um, there's there's going to be a protection period for that exact reason in most auction companies' listing contracts. Auction company listing contracts may also have marketing fees. Um, Sometimes ours do, sometimes they don't. Just depends on the situation. Listing agreement is going to outline pre-listing title search. Most auction companies do that. It's going to outline the defined marketing, and it's going to select the type of sale, and then it's going to talk about buyer default splits. Some auction companies take a share of the buyer default deposit. Some give it all to the seller. Just depends on the auction company. I can tell you that um, I think the last piece of data that I saw was that depending on the area, upwards of 40% of traditional sales fall apart and don't get to closing. Depending on the auctioneer and the company and the area that you're doing a co-listing with, that's more like 2%, 1% don't get to closing because you're on a non-contingent contract and we've vetted the purchasers before allowing to bid. So have about 20 minutes or so for questions. We showing a PowerPoint? Yes. Hollywood Squares. No PowerPoint. No PowerPoint. Okay. And Alan Frankel, yes, Alan says we do broker participation 24 to 48 hours. Kind of, good point in that all auction companies are different. Everybody has a different approach to how they do it. So yeah, make sure to check with the auction company. But again, if you're representing a purchaser, um, best thing that you can do is make sure that you are the conduit between the auction company and the buyer. And some companies like Allen's would say, hey, you have to get us that broker participation form, within 24 hours before the sale. Some like us say, hey, before the buyer registers, etc. So if you are um, advocating for your client and you're finding them properties and you're introducing them, you should be asking that auction company what the policy is and just make sure to comply. Who is paying the buyer broker commission in this transaction? It depends on the auction company. Sometimes there is a co-op and sometimes there is not. Um, in our foreclosure auctions, there at this point in time in our foreclosure auctions, state of Ohio, there is not a buyer co-op fee. Okay, the buyer agent would need to be compensated by their client in a real estate foreclosure auction with our company in the state of Ohio. If we're doing a traditional seller or working for a trustee or a law firm or something like that, there is a co-op, and it's coming out of the buyer's premium. But it depends on the situation and it depends on the auction company. So again, just like finding out what the rules are for is there, what's the participation? Is there participation? Um, you should also be asking, the auction company ahead of time who's paying it and what's that amount. How do we get to the auction website? Google, at least for us, it's griffinusa.com. You can Google, auctioneer in my area. You can find auctioneers and auction companies through the National Auctioneers Association, which is auctioneers.org. Right there on their website, there's a tab that says Find an Auctioneer, and you can go in there and you can find an auctioneer based upon geography and or by what you have to sell. We're talking about real estate here. So, you could go in and I think there's residential, commercial, land, farm. There are a handful of different types of properties that auctioneers have stated in their profile that they sell. But you can do a search at auctioneers.org or Google. How do you determine the listing price in auction listings? We don't. We don't. The market determines the price. If you're asking about how do we determine the minimum bid, that's a negotiation with the seller. It's a discussion with the um, co-listing agent. A lot of the stuff that we do is no minimum, subject to confirmation for the MLS data entry. It is usually kind of the expected return less 40% is kind of the rule of thumb that I have. So if I look at it and say, hey, I think this thing's probably going to sell for 100 grand. I'm putting 60 in the MLS and the description is going to say disregard price property sells at auction in your MLS description and your other marketing descriptions. Oh, Alan took off at 1 o'clock on the news. Can you send us a list of those states? Sean, if you can clarify, this is Sean Hood. If you can clarify what you mean there, I'd be happy to follow up with you. I'm not sure. Can I get a recording? We should have this available on YouTube within a couple of days. Copy recording. Yep. Yeah, like I said, should be available on YouTube in a couple of days. Yep, just got to get it downloaded and put up there. Let me see. Although there are no finding contingencies, what happens if a buyer is free fall for a friend and win a bidder and the financing falls through? Say they decide to quit their job 3 days prior to closing, or they make a big purchase. Denise, the answer to that question is they're screwed. If they don't close for whatever reason, they're probably going to lose their deposit. Especially if the seller I mean, it's not my decision. I'm not the seller. But think about this one. Non-contingent contract for, $500,000. Seller's thinking this is great. And all of a sudden I get a phone call and it's, hey, Rich, sorry, buyer can't close. They decided to quit their job and no longer has financing. Um, my guess is the seller is going to say, good for the buyer. Hope they enjoy moving on with their life and not having that terrible job anymore, but I'm keeping their deposit. And Rich, please call the backup bidder and see what you can do. So that's the reality of what happens. If they can't close for whatever reason, lost their job, quit their job, income ratio changes, car got repoed, their thumb got cut off, doesn't matter. For whatever reason, they're probably losing their deposit. Now, it's also possible, and this is totally up to the seller, Denise. It is also possible that if the property sells for less down the road and they defaulted on a non-contingent contract that doesn't have a limitation of deposit loss as a term of the contract, it's possible that they could get sued by the seller for deficiency. I've seen that happen. So all these things are possible. Any other questions? Recording sent to me. Susie, real estate auctioneer in Arizona. Thanks for jumping in. Hey, Susie, if you're still on,
I'm here. I'm right here listening to you.
hey, okay, so what'd we miss?
I don't think you missed anything. I'm also an instructor for Arizona. So it was John Payne with my brokerage company told me to sit in on this because I'll get both you later, but I'm getting ready to go in to be able to go into the universities to explain this to the ones getting degrees in real estate.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my, I've had a little bit of pushback. Agents are in the room, they think we are the evil empire. We are not. We are professional auctioneers. I'm a member of the National Auctioneers Association. I have over 14 designations with the National Association of Realtors, where I am an instructor, and then I have designations with the National Auctioneers Association. So we are your friend.
Very
And
much. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of the hammer in this kind of presentation because,
that's all
hey,
right.
I, I don't, I want to tell people how it really is. So, because I'm here to help them make money. So,
And that's what we want to do. And the goal in 2026, and those that are in the room that are agents, we need partnerships. We absolutely need partnerships because the whole goal is to find the right property at the right price, et cetera, for our clients. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Well,
Now
hey,
you're part of the country where you're working, and many people that are in the class today, I can see they're a little more open and understand auctions maybe a little bit better, maybe because they're more available. This is a wild west for me out here in Arizona. We do auctions, but it's like they're clueless. The traditional agents, they're clueless.
yeah, we're looking at have our in the process of getting our licenses in New Mexico.
New Mexico, I lived for over 9 years, and
Yeah.
right, and it's an easier reciprocation process for me. I actually thought about that, so get back with me on that. I'd like to pick up New Mexico again particularly when I lived there,
Oh
and
yeah,
I'll go back.
absolutely. We're right now just waiting on the background check to be approved, and then it's sit in on a commission meeting, and our broker's license is approved. So we're hopeful that it would be done. Um,
So what will the brokerage company go in under? What will it be called?
Griffin USA.
The Griffin USA. Okay,
Mhm. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. We were, like I said, we were hopeful that it was going to be done in early September. But we're still waiting on the background check, which reminds me, I'm going to write a note to myself to ask Jeremy about the background check.
It's okay.
Well, thank you for joining, and good luck with your teaching.
Well, I asked if I could see your PowerPoint. I hope you don't mind. I mean, I wouldn't ask permission for you to be able to put it into. I'm also a director on the Real Estate Educators Association. I'm on their board. So looking at the curriculum, I think you did a great job. I just wanted to be able to have it in a format when I go in and do the presentations.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
Not a
All right,
problem.
I'm going to turn it back over to you, but thank you. I enjoyed being in your class.
You're very welcome. Safa, if the reserve price is not met, then the sale doesn't go through. Correct. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. If the reserve price is not met, the seller is not required to sell the property. They're not contractually required to sell the property. However, um, they can if they so choose. And a lot of sellers do choose to do that, right? And again, all auction companies are different, but the way that we do it is we're doing significant feedback to the seller, right? We're going to provide probably a 7 or 8 page feedback report to the seller regarding what the market is telling us, right? How many email blasts went out? So if um, we send out, I just know this number off the top of my head because I just looked at it today. We have 43,000 real estate agent emails in the state of Ohio. If we send out an auction blast to 43,000, it's going to say on that report, e-blast October 30th, 42,000 people, opens 2,200, clicks 75, right? So that data is going to be at the seller. Okay, so we sent out 43,000 emails. Did we get any registered bidders? We had 2 open houses. How many people came through the open houses, right? If we had 6 people through the open houses, what were the comments that those people made, right? Because we're asking them, well, what do you think the property is going to be selling for, right? So we're asking all of those questions to get all of this data, right? Just as much as we're a real estate sales company, we're in the data business, right? Because sellers don't make decisions without information. And if they are making decisions without information, it's an emotional decision, not a logical decision, right? So we try to provide them with as much data as we possibly can, just like most listing agents are as well, right? The feedback report. That's why you get, an email or a text message after you show a property. Agents are asking for feedback. So we're doing that at our open houses. We're doing it by quantifying clicks. We're doing it by um, how many people register. We're doing it by how many bids there were. All of this is creating a data set to help the seller make a decision, especially if there's a reserve price, and especially if the reserve price isn't met. Right? We're going back to the seller and saying, "Hey, I know you wanted 200,000 for it. We got to 194, and here's all the data that says that 194 is the best price we're going to get." So it is possible that the sale does go through even if the reserve price isn't met. Because one, the seller's getting a bunch of information to help them make a selling decision. And two, sometimes they just, they put a reserve on it, especially if it's a bank, right? Banks are great examples. They come in, they say, hey, we have to have a $400,000 reserve on it. Fine with me. I don't even argue them. I don't care. I don't care what the reserve price is. Because I know after doing this since the mid to late 90s that I've never not sold a bank property. The reserve price doesn't matter. So, at least in banks, reserve price is irrelevant. So, yes, it cannot meet reserve and sell, happens all the time. Are there any community resource grants that they can use when bidding? Samuel Garcia, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Um, I, I I would say from the seller side, um, I wouldn't count on being able to get that type of a grant. I would go make sure that you had that grant secured before bidding, but I don't know. Is there a basic cost for sellers to put a property up for auction if the bids do not meet the minimum amount? Depends on the auction company. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Here's an example. Um, I am doing a sale with an auctioneer where we're partnering the deal. It's my client, but it's in his backyard. So um, he charges the seller $2,200 in marketing costs and listing fees in order to put the property up for auction. On with that particular client, I don't charge him fees at all. I don't charge him a marketing fee. So it depends on the auctioneer. Now, in this particular transaction, what we talked about was that, hey, I don't charge this client marketing costs because he's a very good client of mine. So this other auction company that's partnering with me has agreed that they are not going to charge that fee either. We're gonna eat it. I'm gonna eat half. He's gonna eat half. Um, and we're gonna pay that cost to him before we're splitting our fees. But He does charge that upfront to his sellers. This particular seller for me, I don't do it. So it just depends on the auction company. Is the reserve price bottom line reduced by fees, or is it a bottom line price? Um, reserve price is a bottom line price. Reserve price is before buyer's premium. So if the reserve price is 100,000, it's based upon the high bid. The buyer's premium in a $100,000 sale would be $10,000. Total contract price would be 110, but the minimum 100 does not include the buyer's premium. Okay, Samuel Garcia, this is your city's offering it. Okay, cool. Great, that's good for the buyers. What city is that, by the way, Samuel? Where are you? Youngstown. Got it. Cool. Cool. Who's doing most of the auctions there, Samuel? Is it Kiko? If they are, if you see a lot of Kiko auction signs around there, um, that would be a question you call up and talk to Dick Kiko.
Dick, okay. Not
Yeah.
sure yet, but I see a lot of Ohio real estate auctions. I get emails from them just trying to, figure it out, especially with a lot of these abandoned homes and whatnot. So
Yeah. Ohio Real Estate Auctions is Barry Baker.
yeah, I get his emails. I just
Yeah. Yeah.
wasn't sure how to touch
Yeah.
him up.
If you're seeing his signs, I would um, call Barry directly and ask him that question. It's not something that we really get involved in because it's a buyer thing, and we are 100% seller centric. Um, but yeah, if you're seeing a lot of Ohio real estate auctions, just give Barry a call, ask him about it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys. Any other questions? So is anybody that's still on, does this make sense maybe for your buyer or your seller clients? So two questions. One, does it make sense to any of y'all? And on the flip side of that coin, did I scare any all away? Neither?
Hey, Richard, I have my hand up. I was going to tell you a story quickly that relevant to what you're asking all
Oh,
of us.
okay. I'm not seeing hands up, but yeah, jump, go for it.
It's a little raised hand up. I can lower it back down. That tells you I want to talk to you.
Oh, okay. I'm
Okay, it'll
I'm
lower the hand right now. All
I
right.
I'm not seeing. Well, here, let's see.
You
Hand.
see me
Okay.
now. So here's the deal. When I was teaching, we had an agent, and he's actually a fix and flipper. And he's not being able to move the property right now because of our federal government shutdown because FHA and VA, we can't get we're just kind of frozen right now, right? So
Yeah.
he's listening to me and he came up after class. He says, Susie, I do want to approach you on this. So I'll be meeting with him next week because this is the best way that we can get that property moved by putting it in an auction. We'll do an online auction to be able to move that property for him. Mhm.
Yeah, and like I say, investors like it.
Investors like it. We have a bigger, larger marketing base. We really do. Richard can explain that to all of you. And it's no disrespect to the traditionals. I was a traditional agent for many, many years, but then I became a real estate auctioneer. But that one I'm doing right now this week because what's the reason why? He needs to get that house sold. He put money in it, he fixed it up, he wants to flip it. It's not moving. And yet we have one of the hottest markets in the nation. We're the third largest growing state in the nation right now. But federal shutdown's kind of hurting us. That's all.
Yeah, it's screwing up a lot of people. Um,
So on those FHA and VA loans, it's in a lovely area. It's on a lake. Um, it's a fake lake, Lake Lagoons. You know how they build homes around fake
yeah,
lakes,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
but it's very pretty. And he just can't get any. I mean, it'd have to be a cash sale or something where they may have the financing that we can get it for them. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully this government shutdown will be over soon. But you know, I guess there was a question earlier about, what happens if my my guy quits his job and the seller's going to keep the deposit. Well, okay, I guess if the reason is we can't close because there's a government shutdown, that would probably be reasonable, to say, okay, well, we'll extend it. In back, I don't even know how many years. This was one where we had the seller actually said, oh, okay, we'll extend it. It was the buyer was an FBI agent,
Right.
and was it was when the USS Cole got bombed,
Mhm.
and this guy was an explosives expert for the FBI, and he was the contract purchaser, and was deployed to deal with the USS Cole bombing.
Right.
And the seller said, "Oh, okay, well, we'll extend the closing." So that was one situation. I guess, yeah, we can't close because of a government shutdown and FHA loans. That would be another one. But yeah, I decided to quit my job. And yeah, it's probably not going to work.
That's not going to work, but I do want you to know that a couple of other the ones that we're working on because of the government shutdown, we're just reaching out to the hard money lenders, sort of like in a short-term loan. And then when the
Yeah.
government turns back on over their shutdown, where we can get these loans moved, they'll go ahead and bridge right into that FHA or VA loan. So I'm working with the hard money lenders, also known as the loan sharks.
Yes, I hey, look, when I was buying and selling and flipping properties,
Yes.
um yeah, I borrowed money from hard money guys quite a bit. It ended up being easier. I
Yes,
could
it is really easy right now over this government shutdown. I mean,
Yeah,
because when, time is of the essence, we've got a deal, highest bidder came in, we're ready to do this, and then all of a sudden, whoa, that is if they're doing financing. So that's what we're doing, and we've really only been doing this in the last couple of weeks.
yeah, but I mean, hey, look, back then it was I was paying prime plus two
Yes,
um back then, but
yes.
I could walk in and contract for a property on Thursday and turn around and close on it on Tuesday or Wednesday. And hey, prime plus two, not a problem. But I was getting it renovated and turned and back on the market in less than 30 days. So I wasn't using my cash. So prime plus two for 45 days, who cares? I'll
Who
pay that.
cares?
I'll pay that
That's
interest
right.
rate.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good job. Okay, I'll let you talk to your other students now.
Okay. Can I get a recording? Yeah, Tyler, not a problem. We're gonna have it on YouTube. Safa, how about properties with liens? How do you handle those? One of the assessments we're going to do is, um, can the seller sell? So if there's a mortgage, or mechanics lien or something, we're going to go ahead and do that calculation. Again, one of the reasons that you do the title search ahead of time is to identify um, what the potential problems are and what the liens are. Now, liens are a tricky thing, especially if we're dealing with foreclosure, right? Because if you have a property that's in foreclosure, and we just got done doing one of these, I don't know, maybe we closed it 2, 3 months ago. Um, the uh, the fees and penalties and court costs continue to accrue. as we're marketing the property, right? We did a search and did a calculation, and then at the beginning of the transaction, and then found out when we went to closing that the assessment against the buyer had increased. I wanted to say like $17,000 in um, fees, penalties, and court costs over the 21 days, 22 days to get it into contract, and then up to 30 to get it closed. So 50 days, 52 days. They jacked it 17 grand. And I don't know if the lender misreported on the front end or not, but yeah, it's we do take that calculation into consideration before going ahead with the property. So if there's $200,000 worth of liens and we can only sell it for 150,000, it's not a property that we're going to take on. Now, unless it's in a court case and we can cram down some of those fees. Um, there are ways to do it in bankruptcy cases. There are ways to do it in receivership cases. Um, you can sell free and clear with a court order, but that gets complicated. That's a 2 hour PowerPoint just on that question. But generally speaking, if the liens are too high, we just don't take on the project. Guys, I'm happy to hang out for another little bit if there are more questions. But if not, I'm gonna go turn my crock pot on and get my honey garlic chicken thighs going for dinner. And we'll go through the um, the registrations, and everybody put in your email addresses when you registered, and we'll send the link to the YouTube video when we get it compressed and up. And then
Richard, how do I get hold of you?
I was about to say, Susie, if you got a pen in your hand.
Yeah, I'm gonna write it down. Uh-huh.
Yeah, 614-774-4118. And folks, anybody else, if you're still on, you didn't get the phone number off the slide at the beginning. No, it's not on here either. 614-774-4118 is. Oop, what did I do?
You're just in the end.
Yeah, I'm just at the end. There we go. So where's the chat? There we go. Yep. Or yeah, if anybody has other questions or wants to shoot me a text or something, yeah, feel free. We're happy to help you guys out. And it doesn't necessarily need to be Ohio and Florida. We do projects all over the country. So if you're in Alaska and you say, "Hey, I have a problem," we actually can do projects in Alaska. Probably not going to fly out there to do the open house, but
I
we can
might.
do that kind of stuff. Unless Jeremy wants to go to Jeremy, do you have any races scheduled for Alaska?
Not yet, but any chance to get out there.
Yeah. All right, guys. I am going to ask you to start an AI companion. Okay. I don't know. I'm going to deny AI companion. We're shutting down. Okay. Yes. Susie, if you wanted to chat, that's cool. I've got a client call at 2 o'clock. Um, but yeah, shoot me a text and we can set up a time. Sorry, honey, I can't hear you. You're muting. You're still muted.
I'm sorry. I
There we
wanted
go.
to review your video again, so I think your PowerPoint is what I meant to say. I'll look over your PowerPoint. The first four slides I didn't see.
Okay, just text me your email address.
Okay, I will.
Text me your email address. I'll shoot it to you later this afternoon, and then if you wanted to chat, we can get on a call later.
That's good. All right.
Okay.
Hey, thank you. Thank you,
You are
everyone.
very welcome. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy Halloween. Hopefully, this was helpful. Take care, everybody.